Chapter 1. The Secret Encounter. The bustling lower levels of Norilis Prime, the capital of the Galactic Trade Network, were a cacophony of sounds, smells, and sights. The air was thick with the pungent aroma of alien spices and industrial waste, mingling as effortlessly as the species that roamed the streets. Towering buildings loomed above, their blinking signs advertising everything from plasma rifles to exotic fruits, while the hum of hovering transports created a constant background noise. For Ethan Hale, a human and freelance mechanic, this chaotic underbelly was both a sanctuary and a curse. He leaned against the scarred counter of a dingy cantina, his drink untouched as he watched the crowd. The place reeked of desperation and opportunity, the kind of joint where deals were struck in whispers and betrayals came with a smile. For humans like Ethan, widely regarded as a primitive species by many in the galaxy, it was safer to stay in the shadows. Ethan adjusted the worn jacket he wore, its reinforced fabric a relic of his days as an Earth Marine. The wars were long behind him now, but the skills remained, etched into his muscle memory like scars on his body. These days, he stuck to repairing ships and keeping out of trouble. Trouble, however, had a way of finding him. A stranger walks in. The cantina door hissed open, letting in a gust of cool air and a figure that immediately drew every gaze in the room. She wasn't just beautiful, she was otherworldly. Her emerald green skin seemed to glow faintly under the flickering neon lights, and her long silver hair shimmered like liquid moonlight. She moved with a grace that seemed almost unreal, her flowing cloak barely concealing the form-fitting armor beneath. Ethan didn't need to guess, this was someone important, likely someone dangerous. The cantina fell silent for a moment before the patrons quickly resumed their conversations, their tones hushed. Ethan's gaze lingered on her as she approached the bar, her golden eyes scanning the room with a mix of caution and determination. When her gaze locked with his, something unspoken passed between them. "Buy me a drink?" she asked, her voice smooth yet carrying an undertone of urgency. Ethan raised an eyebrow, unsure why she'd singled him out. Still, he gestured to the bartender. "Put whatever she wants on my tab." The alien woman smirked and ordered something Ethan had never heard of. As she sipped her drink, she leaned closer to him, lowering her voice. "Are you Ethan Hale?" Ethan stiffened. It wasn't often that strangers knew his name, and it was never a good sign. "Who's asking?" She glanced around the room before answering. "Someone who needs your help, but we can't talk here." Ethan's instincts screamed at him to refuse, to walk away and leave whatever mess this woman was carrying behind. But the desperation in her eyes made him pause. "Fine," he said after a moment. "Let's step outside." A proposal. Outside the cantina, the streets were quieter, though no less dangerous. Ethan led the woman down a narrow alley, keeping one hand close to the concealed knife at his belt. When they were far enough from prying eyes, he turned to her. "Start talking," he said. "Who are you, and what do you want?" The woman hesitated, her golden eyes flicking to the shadows around them. Then she drew back her hood, revealing a delicate circlet on her brow. Ethan's stomach dropped. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. "I'm Princess Isla of Zithera," she said, her tone tinged with both pride and weariness. "And I need your help." Ethan rubbed a hand over his face. He had heard of the Zitherans, a powerful and reclusive race known for their advanced technology and strict hierarchies. If she was telling the truth, this woman was not only royalty but also likely embroiled in something far above Ethan's pay grade. And why would a Zitheran princess come looking for a washed-up mechanic? Ethan asked skeptically. Isla glanced down the alley before stepping closer. "Because I can't trust anyone else, and because you're good at fixing things." A dangerous secret. Isla explained in hurried whispers that she had fled Zithera under mysterious circumstances. Her father, Emperor Tyrion Zithera, was in the midst of arranging a politically advantageous marriage for her, a union Isla had vehemently opposed. "But it's more than that," she said, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "There's something happening on Zithera, something dark. I overheard my father speaking with the council about a weapon that could change everything." Ethan frowned. "And you think they'll use it?" "I know they will," Isla said, her eyes burning with conviction. "I tried to warn the council, but they dismissed me. When I pushed further, they locked me in my chambers." That's when I knew I had to leave. Ethan leaned against the alley wall, processing her words. So, what do you need from me? I need passage off this planet, Isla said. And I need someone who can help me stop whatever my father is planning. Ethan chuckled bitterly. You've got the wrong guy. I don't do heroics anymore. Isla grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Please, if I'm caught, I'll be executed or worse. Promise me you won't tell anyone about this. Ethan met her gaze, the sincerity in her eyes cutting through his reluctance. Against his better judgment, he nodded. All right, princess. You've got yourself a deal. An uneasy alliance. Ethan led Isla to his workshop, a cramped but well-equipped space tucked away in one of the quieter districts of Narilis Prime. As they entered, Isla's eyes scanned the array of tools and half-finished projects. This is where you work? She asked, a hint of skepticism in her tone. It's not much, but it gets the job done, Ethan replied. He gestured to a corner of the workshop. You can rest there while I figure out our next move. Isla sat down, her posture tense. Do you have a ship? Ethan hesitated. His ship, the Nomad, was functional but far from inconspicuous. Yeah, but it's not exactly subtle. We don't need subtle, Isla said. We just need fast. As Ethan began preparing the ship for departure, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was in over his head. Helping a fugitive princess escape her empire was bad enough. But if what Isla said about the weapon was true, this situation could be far worse than he realized. A deadly pursuit. The next morning, as Ethan and Isla prepared to leave, a piercing alarm shattered the quiet. Ethan rushed to the workshop's surveillance monitors, his heart sinking as he saw a squad of Zithran enforcers approaching. They found us, he muttered. Isla's expression hardened. We have to go. Now. Ethan grabbed his gear and led Isla to the Nomad, the ship's engines already humming to life. As they lifted off, the enforcers opened fire, their plasma bolts narrowly missing the hull. Hold on. Ethan shouted as he piloted the ship into Narilis Prime's dense traffic lanes. The enforcers pursued them relentlessly, their sleek ships weaving through the chaos. Isla sat in the co-pilot's seat, her hands gripping the controls. We can't outrun them forever. Watch me, Ethan replied, his jaw set. With a combination of daring maneuvers and sheer luck, Ethan managed to lose their pursuers in the maze of the city. But as they escaped into the vastness of space, he knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. The Unveiling. The Nomad soared through the darkness of space, its hull trembling slightly as Ethan pushed the engines to their limits. The pursuit on Narilis Prime had left both him and Isla shaken, though neither would admit it. Ethan's hands tightened around the controls, his mind racing through possibilities. He had spent years avoiding trouble, and now he was flying headfirst into it. Are they still following us? Isla asked, her voice calm but her golden eyes betraying her unease. Ethan glanced at the ship's scanners. Not yet, but it won't take them long to figure out where we're headed. And where is that, exactly? Nowhere, for the moment, Ethan replied. We'll keep to the trade lanes for a while, blend in with civilian traffic. Once I'm sure we've lost them, we'll find somewhere safe to regroup. Isla nodded, though the tension in her shoulders didn't ease. She leaned back in the co-pilot's chair, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. Thank you, she said softly. For what? Ethan asked, his tone laced with sarcasm. Dragging me into the crosshairs of an imperial manhunt? A faint smile crossed Isla's lips. For helping me. You didn't have to. Ethan sighed, leaning back in his chair. Yeah, well, don't thank me yet. This is only going to get worse. Secrets in the dark. Hours passed as the Nomad navigated the bustling trade lanes. Ethan set the ship to autopilot and turned to Isla, who was quietly reviewing star charts on the console. So, he said, breaking the silence, you want to tell me more about this weapon your father's cooking up? The one that's worth hunting you halfway across the galaxy? Isla hesitated, her expression guarded. What do you know about Zithran history? Not much, Ethan admitted. Just that your people are some of the most advanced in the galaxy. Great at building stuff, not so great at sharing it. Isla's gaze hardened. That's because we've spent centuries defending ourselves. The Zithran Empire has survived countless invasions, rebellions, and betrayals. My father believes the only way to ensure our survival is through absolute dominance. And this weapon is his way of doing that? Ethan guessed. She nodded. It's called Project Eclipsion. I don't know all the details, but from what I overheard, it's designed to rewrite reality. They're using quantum singularities to destabilize the fabric of space itself. My father claims it's a deterrent, but I know better. If it's completed, it won't just be used to protect Zithra, it will be used to control the galaxy. Ethan's stomach sank. You're saying your father built a doomsday device? Yes, Isla said, her voice trembling, and he's willing to use it. A risky plan. Ethan rubbed his temples, his mind racing. He had expected Isla's story to be bad, but not this bad. All right, he said finally. If we're going to stop this, we need a plan. Do you know where they're building this thing? The Nebula Forge, Isla replied. It's an orbital facility hidden deep within the Zithran core systems. It's heavily guarded, no one gets in without authorization. Great, Ethan muttered. So, we'll need a way to sneak in. Any idea how we do that? Isla hesitated, then glanced at him. There's someone who can help. A former Zithran scientist named Kalian Voss. He worked on Project Eclipsion before defecting. If anyone knows how to dismantle it, it's him. Where is he now? Ethan asked. Isla frowned. The last I heard, he was hiding on Krylos 5. Ethan groaned. Krylos 5 was a desolate mining planet on the edge of Zithran space, notorious for its lawlessness. Of course he is. Krylos 5. The Nomad arrived at Krylos 5 a day later, descending through the planet's turbulent atmosphere toward a sprawling shantytown built among the ruins of an abandoned mining colony. The settlement was a patchwork of ramshackle buildings, glowing neon signs, and crowded streets teeming with unsavory characters. Stay close, Ethan warned Isla as they stepped off the ship. Places like this eat people alive. Isla nodded, her cloak pulled tightly around her to conceal her identity. Together, they navigated the narrow streets, dodging pickpockets and avoiding the prying eyes of bounty hunters. They found Kalian Voss in a dimly lit cantina, hunched over a datapad and nursing a drink. The scientist was a frail-looking Zithran with silver hair and a nervous demeanor, his hands trembling slightly as he worked. Kalian, Isla said, stepping forward. The scientist looked up sharply, his eyes widening. Princess Isla? What are you doing here? We need your help, Isla said urgently. Project Eclipsion, my father is going to use it. We have to stop him. Kalian's expression darkened. I knew this would happen. That's why I left. I told them it was too dangerous, but they wouldn't listen. Then help us, Isla pleaded. You know the project better than anyone. If we can get to the Nebula Forge dash... Stop, Kalian interrupted, shaking his head. You don't understand. The project has safeguards, fail-safes designed to prevent tampering. If you try to dismantle it without the proper codes, it could trigger a chain reaction that destroys entire star systems. Ethan cursed under his breath. So what do we do? Kalian hesitated, then glanced around nervously. There's only one way. We'll need to access the central control core at the forge. It's the only place where the codes can be overridden. And how do we get there? Isla asked. Kalian's voice dropped to a whisper. Through the Nebula corridor. It's a restricted route guarded by Zithran patrols. If you're caught. We won't be, Ethan said firmly. We'll find a way. An ominous warning. As they left the cantina, Kalian in tow, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. His instincts proved correct when a group of bounty hunters ambushed them in a dark alley. The fight was brief but brutal, with Ethan and Isla working together to fend off their attackers. They're getting closer, Isla said, her voice trembling as they hurried back to the Nomad. If they find us before we reach the forge. They won't, Ethan said, though his tone betrayed his uncertainty. As they prepared to leave Krylos 5, Kalian gave them one final warning. If you fail, he said, his eyes grim, there won't be anything left to save. Chapter 3. Into the Nebula. The Nomad drifted silently in the dark expanse, its engines humming at the lowest possible output. Ahead lay the Nebula corridor, a shimmering expanse of dense gas clouds, laced with gravitational anomalies and hidden Zithran patrol ships. The route was infamous not just for its treacherous navigation, but for the elite guards who ensured no unauthorized vessel passed through alive. Ethan Hale, seated at the ship's controls, felt the weight of the mission settle heavily on his shoulders. To his left, Princess Isla sat in quiet determination, her golden eyes fixed on the swirling colors of the nebula ahead. In the back of the cockpit, Kalian Voss adjusted his portable scanner nervously. "This corridor is a death trap," Kalian muttered. "The Zithran patrols will detect us the moment we enter. Even if we survive the anomalies, we'll be intercepted." Ethan glanced over his shoulder. "Not if I have anything to say about it." Isla leaned forward, her voice firm. "We don't have a choice. If we don't reach the Nebula Forge, my father will activate Project Eclipsion and billions of lives will be at risk." Kalian sighed, resigned. "Then let's hope your pilot knows what he's doing." A treacherous path. The Nomad slipped into the nebula corridor, its hull illuminated by the swirling gases outside. Ethan's hands moved deftly over the controls, steering the ship through narrow passages where gravitational forces threatened to tear it apart. The dense clouds played havoc with the sensors, making it nearly impossible to detect approaching threats. "Anything on the scanners?" Ethan asked. Kalian shook his head. "Nothing yet, but that doesn't mean they aren't out there." As if on cue, the ship's proximity alarm blared. Isla's gaze snapped to the monitor, which displayed 3 Zithran patrol ships closing in fast. "They found us!" Kalian exclaimed. Ethan cursed under his breath. "Hold on." The Nomad banked hard to the right, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma bolts. Ethan pushed the engines to maximum, weaving through the nebula's dense gas clouds in an attempt to lose their pursuers. "They're locking on," Isla warned. Ethan gritted his teeth, his mind racing. The nebula's gravitational anomalies were a double-edged sword. They could use them to evade the patrols, but one wrong move could destroy the ship. "Kalian," Ethan barked. "Can you patch into their comms? I need a distraction." Kalian scrambled to comply, his hands flying over the console. Moments later, the comm system crackled to life, and a distorted Zithran voice filled the cockpit. "This is Patrol Unit 7. Unauthorized vessel. You are ordered to surrender immediately or be destroyed." Ethan smirked. "Not today." Kalian activated a jamming signal, causing the patrol ship's targeting systems to glitch. The Nomad dove into a narrow passage, the Zithran ships struggling to follow. A dangerous gamble. Despite Ethan's skillful piloting, the Zithran patrols continued to close in. Isla clenched the armrests of her seat, her heart racing as the Nomad dodged another volley of plasma fire. "We can't keep this up," she said. "They'll catch us eventually." Ethan's eyes flicked to the navigation display. A gravitational anomaly loomed ahead, a swirling vortex of unstable energy. It was a deadly hazard, but it might also be their only chance. "Hold tight," Ethan said, steering the ship toward the anomaly. Kalian's eyes widened in alarm. "Are you insane? That thing will tear us apart." "Not if I time it right." The Nomad accelerated toward the vortex, the ship's hull creaking under the strain. The Zithran patrols hesitated, unwilling to risk the anomaly, but one ship pressed on, determined to finish the chase. Ethan's hands moved with practiced precision, guiding the Nomad through the swirling energy. At the last possible moment, he pulled the ship into a sharp dive, narrowly avoiding the vortex's pull. The pursuing patrol ship wasn't as lucky. It was caught in the anomaly and disintegrated in a blinding flash of light. Isla let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That was insane." Ethan grinned. "You're welcome." Reaching the forge. After hours of tense navigation, the Nebula Forge finally came into view. The massive orbital facility was a sprawling structure of black steel and glowing energy conduits, its silhouette illuminated by the distant stars. Dozens of Zithran ships patrolled the area, their movements precise and coordinated. Kalian studied the scanners. The central control core is located in the inner ring. If we can get inside, I can upload a shutdown code that will disable Project Eclipsion. How do we get past the patrols? Isla asked. Ethan pointed to a cargo transport docked near one of the outer rings. We sneak in. If we can latch onto that transport, we'll have a shot at slipping past their defenses. Isla nodded. Let's do it. Infiltration. The plan worked, though not without complications. The Nomad latched onto the transport undetected, allowing the trio to board the Nebula Forge. Disguised as cargo workers, they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, avoiding patrols and security drones. Kalian led the way, his knowledge of the facility proving invaluable. The control core is just ahead, he whispered. Once we're inside, I'll need time to override the safeguards. They reached the control core without incident, but their luck ran out as Kalian began his work. The door behind them slid open, and a squad of Zithran guards stormed in, weapons raised. Hands up, the lead guard barked. Ethan moved first, his years of military training kicking in. He grabbed a nearby pipe and swung it with deadly precision, taking down one guard. Isla joined the fight, her agility and combat skills making her a formidable opponent. Kalian worked frantically at the console, his fingers flying over the controls. "I need more time," he shouted. Sacrifice and success. The fight was chaotic and brutal. Ethan and Isla held their ground, but the guards kept coming. Just as the last of the enemies fell, the room shook violently, a warning that the forge's automated defenses had been activated. Kalian's voice cut through the chaos. "The shutdown code is uploading, but I can't stop the self-destruct sequence. We need to leave now." Ethan and Isla helped Kalian to his feet, the trio sprinting through the corridors as alarms blared. They reached an emergency escape pod just as the forge began to collapse. The pod launched seconds before a massive explosion engulfed the facility, the shockwave propelling them into the nebula. A narrow escape. The escape pod drifted in silence, the three occupants catching their breath. The destruction of the nebula forge meant that Project Eclipsion had been stopped for now, but the cost had been high, and the threat of the Zithran Empire remained. Isla turned to Ethan, her golden eyes filled with gratitude. "You didn't have to come this far, but you did. Thank you." Ethan smiled faintly. "We're not done yet, Princess. This is just the beginning." Chapter 4. A Galaxy United. The escape pod drifted silently in the nebula, its systems humming faintly as it moved toward the nearest safe zone. The fiery destruction of the nebula forge had shaken the entire region, its shockwave leaving a ripple in the fabric of the galaxy. Inside the cramped pod, Ethan, Isla, and Kalian sat in tense silence, the weight of their actions bearing down on them. The aftermath. Ethan adjusted the pod's navigation console, his jaw clenched. "We're clear of Zithran space for now, but they'll come looking. It's only a matter of time." Kalian, pale and visibly shaken, stared out at the swirling nebula. "We've set them back, but the Empire won't stop. Tyrion will see this as a declaration of war." Isla remained quiet, her gaze distant. She had always known that defying her father would have consequences, but the destruction of the forge felt like a line she could never uncross. For the first time, she wasn't sure what came next. "We need to rally the galaxy," she said finally, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "This isn't just about Zithra anymore. If my father succeeds in rebuilding Project Eclipsion, no one will be safe." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You think the galaxy is just going to jump at the chance to stand with you? Most people out there see the Zithrans as untouchable. They won't follow me because I'm a princess," Isla said. "They'll follow because they have no choice. If we don't unite now, we'll all fall separately." A call to arms. The pod eventually reached a neutral outpost on the edge of Valoran space, a hub for traders, smugglers, and refugees. It was here that Isla and Ethan began their campaign to rally support. Isla addressed the leaders of the Valoran Confederacy, an insectoid race known for their strategic brilliance and cautious diplomacy. She spoke with passion and conviction, detailing the horrors of Project Eclipsion and the Zithran Empire's growing threat. "The destruction of the Nebula Forge bought us time," she said, her golden eyes blazing. "But my father will rebuild. If we don't act now, the galaxy will face a weapon capable of obliterating entire systems." The Valoran Chancellor, Trin, regarded her thoughtfully. "Your words are compelling, Princess Isla, but why should we trust you? You are still Zithran." "I am Zithran," Isla admitted, "but I'm also someone who has seen the cost of our arrogance. I don't ask for your trust, I ask for your help, because without it, none of us will survive." Building the Alliance. Word of Isla's plea spread quickly, reaching other corners of the galaxy. The Tarnathi Coalition, longtime rivals of the Zithrans, pledged their support almost immediately. Their hive mind communication allowed them to mobilize quickly, their fleets converging on Valoran space. The Earth Federation, though cautious, also joined the growing alliance. Admiral Rinaldan, who had been skeptical of Ethan's involvement, now saw the potential for humanity to play a pivotal role in the galaxy's future. This isn't just about defending ourselves, Alden said during a strategy meeting. This is our chance to prove that humanity belongs on the galactic stage. As the alliance grew, so did the resistance within the Zithran Empire. Reports of unrest and rebellion began to filter through, with entire colonies refusing to support Emperor Tyrion's war efforts. Isla's actions had sparked a movement, and the cracks in the Empire's foundation were beginning to show. A final confrontation. Despite the Alliance's progress, the threat of Project Eclipsion loomed large. Intelligence gathered by Kalian revealed that Tyrion had already begun constructing a second facility, codenamed Eclipsion Prime, in a hidden location. The Alliance launched a desperate search, using every resource at their disposal to locate the new forge before it was operational. Ethan, Isla, and Kalian were at the forefront of the effort, their roles evolving as the stakes grew higher. Ethan became a key strategist, his military experience proving invaluable in coordinating the Alliance's disparate forces. Isla emerged as a unifying figure, her speeches and personal courage inspiring even the most hesitant leaders. When the location of Eclipsion Prime was finally discovered, heavily fortified station hidden within the Thalrex Nebula, the Alliance prepared for their most ambitious operation yet. This is it, Isla said during the final briefing. The future of the galaxy depends on what we do here. The Battle of Eclipsion Prime. The Allied fleet arrived at the Thalrex Nebula in waves, their ships forming an imposing armada that stretched as far as the eye could see. The Zithran defenses were formidable, with dozens of warships and automated turrets guarding the station. Ethan piloted the Nomad at the head of a strike team, his hands steady on the controls. Isla sat beside him, her determination unwavering. "Ready?" he asked, glancing at her. She nodded. "Let's finish this." The battle began with a ferocity that shook the nebula itself. Ships clashed in dazzling displays of light and fire, their weapons carving paths through the swirling gases. Despite their numerical disadvantage, the Alliance fought with a desperation that kept the Zithrans on the defensive. Ethan and Isla led the charge toward the station, dodging enemy fire as they closed in on the central core. Inside the station, Kalian worked to disable the forge's systems, his expertise proving crucial as time ticked away. The Emperor's fall. As the battle raged, Isla faced her father in the heart of the station. The confrontation was as much emotional as it was physical, with Tyrion refusing to back down from his vision of Zithran supremacy. "You've betrayed your people," Tyrion spat, his eyes blazing with anger. "Everything I've done was to ensure our survival." "No," Isla replied, her voice steady. "You did this to ensure your power. But true strength comes from unity, not domination." Their fight was brutal and personal, with Isla ultimately emerging victorious. She deactivated the Forge's systems, ensuring that Project Eclipsion could never be used. A new beginning. The destruction of Eclipsion Prime marked a turning point in galactic history. The Zithran Empire, weakened and leaderless, was forced to negotiate peace with the Alliance. Isla, hailed as a hero, became a key figure in the rebuilding process, her vision of unity guiding the galaxy toward a new era. Ethan, though reluctant to embrace the spotlight, found a sense of purpose in his role as Isla's trusted advisor and partner. Together, they navigated the challenges of forging a better future, their bond unbreakable. As the galaxy began to heal, Isla looked to the stars with hope. "Promise me," she said to Ethan one evening, "that you'll stay." Ethan smiled, taking her hand. "I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time in years, the galaxy dared to dream of peace.